the heart and soul behind every business. Stories. Welcome to Business Story of the Week, hosted by me, Joshua Laurie. From setbacks to comebacks, from tragedies to triumphs, we inspire entrepreneurs through conversations that matter. Witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. Whether it's your career, business, or life, your success is always one story away. This is Business Story of the Week.
This is Mike Berne, and I'm here for Business Story of the Week.
Fantastic. And that is the man himself, Mike Berne. He's our guest for today. My name is Joshua, of course, and I am your host every week, every day, every episode. We start this off with a question. And today's question is, what is the future of shopping? And how do we survive retail apocalypse, so to speak? Or how do we even, or can we even navigate a retail renaissance? Well, Mike is the perfect guest to answer that question. He's going to lead us into the retail renaissance. Michael Berne is one of North America's leading retail experts and futurists. In addition to his nearly 25 years as a retail planning and real estate consultant across North America and beyond, he is a confident speaker, having delivered keynotes at industry conferences as well as lectures at the University of Pennsylvania and the University of California, Berkeley. He also writes the widely read Retail Contrarian blog and has contributed to articles to publications such as ULI's Urban Land, CNU's Public Square, and Dow Jones and Co.'s Market Watch. And today we got Mike all for ourselves. He's going to be sharing his experience and his contrarianism, so to speak. Michael, the Renaissance man himself. How are you doing? Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, how are you, Joshua?
I'm doing great. It's a great morning here. Great afternoon for you over there, Mike. I'm quite excited with our interview. I always started off with an origin story, though. What was the young Michael Berne like? What was the young Mike like? Was he always into retail? What would the young Mike think about the future of the Mike today who always thinks about the future of retail?
It's a good question, Snow, because Josh, I gotta tell you, if you had asked me, when I was in college or before that, growing up, what I'd be doing, this wouldn't be the first thing that came to mind. Let's put it this way: I was not a shopper growing up. I mean, I was a mall rat like any other self-respecting American teenager in the 80s. But yeah, I wouldn't have predicted I would have a career understanding retail and where it's going. I wouldn't even have expected that I would have my own business. I was not one of those kids who had their little lemonade stands,
Entrepreneur spirit.
No, that wasn't that. I wouldn't have predicted that either. And even into graduate school, I did get a graduate degree in political philosophy. So nothing having to do with retail. When I finished that graduate degree, I said to myself, okay, let's try to come down to earth a little bit,
Right.
And get a job. And I got a job working as a policy analyst for an elected official in New York City. And I was exposed to the field of economic development. And then I learned that there was this field called urban planning I didn't know existed. My college had not really helped me to see that sort of career path. And I kind of found it on my own. And so I went to work for an urban planning firm. And because I didn't have any background in urban planning, I just kind of was a generalist who had learned a lot of stuff on my own. They kind of put me to work on market studies and economic development, commercial revitalization, simply put, I was working on how you can revitalize downtrodden main streets and
Really?
downtowns, right?
Okay. Okay.
And so, obviously retail is a big part of that, right?
Right. Of course.
Arguably the most important part of it.
Right.
And so I started to just kind of learn on my own,
Uh-huh.
how retail works
Right there.
and how retailers think. Um, exciting places can come
Right.
alive through retail. And eventually I went to do some work for an urban retail developer. And then finally decided, it was 2002, let's try this on my own. I was getting calls from clients that my firm had when I was a planner, and they wanted me to come help them. And I was like, well, why not try this by putting out my own shingle, right? And that was 2002. 22 years later, it's kind of, it's done well for me. And so here we are.
And here we are talking about exactly the journey that you have undertaken from from masters to not graduate degrees, and not even having that entrepreneurial bone in you. But now you've come to this journey to talk about exactly that. And I want to highlight that because you talk about the main streets, right? You talk about that's where you started. You work both across vibrant main streets, but now you also are, of course, focused on digital marketplaces when it comes to
Yeah.
retail. How do you see these two areas converging, so to speak, and what surprises have emerged from the way they've overlapped throughout your career?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, Joshua, because there was certainly a time, I would say maybe 10 years ago, when, online retail was first kind of, it
Exactly.
was really exploding, right? I mean, Amazon got its start in the 90s, a long time ago, but it wasn't until maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago when people started to realize, wow, this could really become the dominant form of retail, right? And and 10 years ago, you heard a lot of kind of predictions that brick and mortar retail would lose its reason for being, right? Why do we even need stores anymore when you could really just order anything and everything from the comfort of your couch, delivered to your door? Uh, you know, and indeed, you had some of the loudest voices in Silicon Valley saying, look, we don't need physical stores anymore. You know, Now that kind of ignored a lot of realities of human psychology and how we live our lives. In some ways, it proved correct for certain types of shopping. The
Okay.
kinds of shopping we traditionally would think of as just, kind of errands, like just,
Right. Right. Precisely.
the things that we don't like to do but have to do.
Mhm.
Online shopping could make that easier, right? Like,
Exactly. Precisely.
but that's only part of shopping, right?
That's it.
And there's
Exactly.
other types of shopping where actually we prefer to do that in person. And those kinds of shopping don't lend themselves so easily to digital to digital to the
Precisely.
digital world,
Digital
right?
space is the middle market. Yes.
Yeah,
Precisely.
we want to touch, we want to feel, we want to smell, we want to engage sensually in the experience of shopping.
Would you say this is the retail renaissance, so to speak, especially when we started transitioning into digital? How did you navigate around that? Because, like you said, we want to touch the product physically, but now it's become digital. How did you navigate that?
Well, I think that's part of what became clearer and clearer is that there were certain types of retail that were going to remain in person because that's just the way we as consumers prefer it.
Okay, of
And,
course.
I think the pandemic actually turned out to be quite revealing in that regard. Because if ever there was a moment when digital retail would take over, it would be at a time when we were kind of stuck in our houses, right?
Mm.
We were, it was a time when we were either on lockdown or even if we could go out and shop, maybe, there were restrictions on how many people would be allowed in the store, or even if we could be allowed in the store, we might not have felt safe in the store. If ever there was a moment when online would take over, that would have been it.
That's it.
And it didn't happen. It just didn't happen. What's fascinating is that in the first 2 years of the pandemic, 2020 and 2021, into 2022, at the end of that 2-year period, online's market share as a percent of total retail sales was not all that different from what it would have been given historic growth rates if a pandemic had never happened at all.
There you go. That's it. That's
because
it.
yeah,
It's a clincher right there. The difference maker, the pandemic. It's our entire mindset, our entire psyche when it came to the marketplace, when it came to retail, shifted. What do you think? What was that major shift for us? What was it that completely changed the whole retail marketplace?
Well, I think we learned that there's just some things we will always want to do in person.
That's it.
Unless we can't, right? Because in 2020, in the first few months of the pandemic, yeah, we were doing a lot of things online, but that didn't endure.
Yes.
And so I think there's a ceiling to how much we want to actually do and shop online. And there's a ceiling to how much we want to do that, or in which categories we are willing to do that, right?
Precisely.
And there's another piece of this which I wanted to bring up. It's that ultimately, the other side of this is that the businesses, the ones that are selling goods and services, they need to make money. And the big secret is that it's very hard to make money selling goods and services online. And there's a variety of reasons for that.
Okay.
Shipping is very expensive.
Of course.
Right?
Yep.
Acquiring and retaining customers is very expensive because you have to advertise digitally. And there's only a few places where you can do that. You can do that on Facebook, you can do that on Google, and at least in the United States, that's pretty much it. So those two companies charge a lot for it. So it's very expensive to acquire and retain customers, right? So for that reason, businesses, they kind of have to operate stores, physical stores, in order to make money, because selling online is actually very hard to make money that way. And the only way you can really do it is if you're selling online and you're operating stores. Or if you can't operate stores, at least have your merchandise sold within stores, within other retailers.
Wow.
It has to be both.
It has to be both. So here's the thing, Mike. I feel like you've experienced both. Like we talked about again, the convergence of physical stores and digital marketplaces. You've experienced both in the what 22 years that you've been in this journey and been in this career, Mike. How do you now help individuals, organizations? How do you help them navigate this marketplace? And if there's anything, like we said, we kicked off the show with this. What is the future of shopping?
Yeah. I think that there is a certain amount of shopping and certain types of shopping that will always be in person, in physical stores.
Yeah. There's always going to be that.
Because because that's the way we prefer to do it. And then there's other types of shopping which make a lot more sense online, right? And I think the secret for communities is to understand which is which. And the
That's
secret
it.
for businesses is to understand which things make more sense online and which things make more sense in a physical store,
Yes,
and where the physical stores need to be in order to in order to uh, kind of make people buy more online. That
that's
might
it.
sound a little weird, but what's interesting is that when you have physical stores in the right place, your online sales as a business actually increase,
Interesting.
right? Yeah.
So it's
So,
really both, so to speak.
yes,
It's really both. Like you have an online store, but also it won't perform as much if you don't have a physical store.
right. Repeatedly, it's been shown that when a retailer closes a store in a certain market, closes a physical store, their online sales in that market decrease.
Why do you
And when
think that
they,
is, Mike?
because I think
Interesting.
when I was talking about acquiring and retaining customers, when you see a store, it's a billboard, it's an advertisement. It actually leaves an imprint on your mind, right? You know it's there, right? If you don't see that store, out in the world, if you don't see that billboard, if you don't see an advertisement, you don't know it's there. The way I think about it is a website does
Yes,
you no good if no one knows it's there.
it's almost like branding too, right? Like
Yeah,
you're
it's
always constantly,
completely branded, right?
like
You
it's your
you have
constant
to.
visibility, so to speak.
It's visibility. It's what they call consumer mind share.
Wow.
How do you get and stay on people's minds? How do you get and stay on their radar screens, as it
Right.
was? And if physical stores enable you to do that, and they enable you to do that much more cheaply than buying an ad on Google, right?
Right.
So Oh yeah, it's interesting. And when businesses actually open stores in a market, their online sales increase.
Interesting.
So the two need to work together. You would really call it clicks and bricks, right? And
Tricks and break.
a retailer needs to do both.
That's very
And
interesting.
yeah,
Well, talking about clicks and bricks, these are very challenging times as well, especially for brick and mortar,
yeah,
shopping or retail brick and mortar, mom and pops and all that. But Mike, I understand that this is what you do. You consult about that. You consult about this shifts in the marketplace and then navigating all of that. Mike, what would a brick and mortar, when if retail trends, we were talking about retail apocalypse earlier, if it was like a weather pattern, so to speak, how would brick and mortar shops, you know, navigate a passing storm or, you know, stay steady during a shifting climate like this in the retail space?
yeah. Well, a lot of times it's about, there's an expression. I think it was originally said by Warren Buffett, who's a famous American investor, right? Who said, when you know, during a recession, for instance, or during any sort of period of economic adversity, it's when the tide kind of rolls out, you see who's not wearing any underwear, right?
Mhm.
It's when things are hard that you see what's really going on and who's covered and who's not. And the reality is that some businesses have prepared for the rainy day.
Uh-huh.
They have prepared for the storm and they have reserves to draw on.
There
They
you
don't
go.
have much debt, for instance.
Okay. Okay. Very important.
They have a relatively clean balance sheet,
Mhm.
or they have a lot of goodwill with with their vendors. And so their vendors will be patient with them. And then there are other businesses that were basically, they were living on the edge,
Yep.
right? And they were caught with their pants down
Caught
without
with
any
their
underwear,
pants, and that's it.
right?
That's it.
And so probably mangling the expression, but the point is is self-evident that they were caught with their pants down and they they for instance, they might have a lot of debt that they have to pay back, right? And now suddenly they don't have the revenue with which to pay it back, and they don't have the trust of lenders to be able to refinance that debt, or maybe they can only refinance it at much higher interest rates in the environment we're in now. And so it all kind of collapses, right? So it really is about, and what's happened is that a lot of businesses have been able to expand through certain sorts of financial mechanisms, which leave them very exposed at times like this.
Right. So it's really about preparation, making sure you have that accounting underwear on, making sure it's clean, making sure it's aired out, make sure it's properly dried out. Mike, of course, the website is Michael J. Berne.com, Berne with the BRNE. Mike, this is something that you are clearly the expert on this, as you've shown throughout the episode so far and the show so far. And we talked about this. What is the future of shopping? And you often challenge established retail narratives. I mean, you've gone through so many narratives in those 22 years. I want to ask now, like, what does the future of shopping look like? And how do you see some of today's hype? You're talking about drone deliveries, metaverse, and AI. How do you see these things? How do you see basically the retail marketplace shaking out in the long run?
Yeah. Well, I think what's, and this is something Steve Jobs said, that the point of a paradigm shift is that you don't see them coming, right? And the reality is that retail is an incredibly fast changing field, but also not only is it change fast, it will definitely change. That's one thing we do know. We cannot understand the future simply by extrapolating the present. What we can do is prepare ourselves for many possible directions that the future can take, right? And so one of the best ways to mitigate risk is to stay diversified. And the same holds here, so that you are prepared for many different trajectories that might ensue.
Because it's always going to change, especially in the future. There's always going to be different changes, but it goes back to that making sure you have your, not being caught with your pants down. I love it, Mike, because again, this is what you do. You consult as well. The website is michaeljberne.com. There's also another website. It is consultmjb.com. Mike, where else can we find you? Where else can we connect with you and learn more?
Yeah. So those two websites. The michaeljberne.com is for my speaking and writing.
Right.
And for consulting, that's consultmjb.com. You can also go to my LinkedIn page. I just put my name in there, and I've written a lot about these subjects, and that's where my retail contrarian blog can be found. And just connect with me there. I'd love to hear from you. And so, even if you disagree, in fact, especially if you disagree, I enjoy a good debate.
There you go. Well, of course, I'm going to make sure to send Mike right now a connection request to all our audience and listeners out there. If you're not already connected with Mike, go give him a connection request all over on LinkedIn. Go check out the website. Go check out, his, if you feel like you want to navigate this retail marketplace with the Renaissance man himself, go check out his website, consultmjb.com. Mike, it's been great. The knowledge, the wisdom, the perspective is very, very valuable. Thank you for coming on the show. I truly enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me, Joshua.
Fantastic. To all our audience and listeners out there, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Make sure, again, go check out Mike. Go check him out on LinkedIn. And thank you for watching the episode. We will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
All right, so here's the thing. We try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.